The porcelain dish shattered against the wall just inches from Clara Hayes' head. Her father's roar split through the dining room, whiskey dripping from his words. "Talk back to me again in front of guests, and I'll make you regret it." Around the table, silence. Forks frozen midair. Her mother trembling, pretending not to see. Clara's cheek stung. Her vision blurred, but she refused to cry. Then the doorbell rang. And when her father yanked it open, a man in a black coat stepped in, calm, cold, and merciless. "Mr. Hayes," he said softly, "you're late on your payment, and your manners." The turkey sat cooling on the table, untouched. 23 years old, and Clara Hayes still flinched at the sound of her father's voice rising above conversation level. Gregory Hayes stood at the head of the dining table in their Brookline home, his face flushed red beneath gray stubble. The crystal tumbler in his hand caught the light from the chandelier, his fourth bourbon of the evening, though dinner had barely started. "You think you're so damn smart," he slurred, pointing at Clara with the hand not gripping his glass. "College degree, and you can't even get a real job. Living under my roof, eating my food." "Gregory, please." Margaret Hayes' voice was paper-thin, a sound that carried no weight. She'd perfected that voice over 26 years of marriage. The voice that begged without demanding. The voice that disappeared into wallpaper. Clara's younger sister Sophie sat frozen, her fork halfway to her mouth. 12 years old with braids their mother had woven that morning, before the shouting started, before the accusations, before the whiskey took hold. "I have a job interview Monday," Clara said quietly. She shouldn't have spoken. She knew better. But the words came anyway, tired of being swallowed. The slap came fast. Her father's palm connected with her cheek, the crack sharp enough to make Sophie gasp. Clara's head snapped sideways. The taste of copper flooded her mouth where her teeth caught the inside of her cheek. The dining room crystallized into absolute silence. Clara pressed her palm against her burning face, blinking back tears that were equal parts pain and rage. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of him. She'd learned that lesson at 16 when crying only made him angrier, made him feel justified in his cruelty. "You want to live here. You show respect," Gregory said, as if he'd done nothing more than tap her shoulder. He took another drink, the ice clinking against glass. "This is my house. My rules." Margaret's hands shook as she reached for her wine glass. She wouldn't meet Clara's eyes. She never did. Looking away was easier than acknowledging what happened at this table night after night, year after year. Clara's throat tightened. The metallic taste grew stronger. She could feel the heat radiating from her cheek, the way her skin throbbed in the exact shape of her father's hand. This was Thanksgiving. This was supposed to be about gratitude. The doorbell rang. Gregory's head snapped toward the sound, irritation flickering across his features. "Who the hell comes calling on Thanksgiving?" "I'll get it," Clara said, pushing her chair back. Anything to escape the table. Anything to breathe air that didn't taste like bourbon and violence. "Sit down," her father commanded. But Clara was already standing, already moving toward the front door. Behind her, she heard Gregory curse and stumble after her. She reached the door first and pulled it open. A man stood on their porch, snowflakes dusting the shoulders of his black wool coat. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair and eyes the color of gunmetal. His face was sharp angles and controlled calm. The kind of calm that made Clara's instincts scream danger in a completely different register than her father's rage. "Clara Hayes?" the man asked, his voice quiet and precise. "Yes." Gregory shoved past her, bourbon sloshing in his glass. "What do you want?" The stranger's gaze moved from Clara to her father, lingering for a moment on Gregory's flushed face and aggressive stance. When he spoke again, his tone hadn't changed, but something underneath it had sharpened. "Mr. Hayes, I'm Dominic Morello. We need to discuss your outstanding debt." The blood drained from Gregory's face. Clara watched her father's expression shift through a rapid sequence. Confusion, recognition, fear, then false bravado fueled by whiskey and pride. "I don't know what you're talking about," Gregory said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Dominic Morello stepped forward, not aggressive, but inevitable, like winter moving south. $200,000. 3 months overdue. My organization has been very patient. The word organization hung in the cold air like a blade. Clara's mind raced. Debt. Organization. The way this man carried himself, expensive coat, expensive shoes, expensive watch visible beneath his cuff. This wasn't a bank. This wasn't legal. "Get off my property," Gregory said, but he stepped back. Dominic's gaze shifted past him, landing on Clara again. She was still standing in the doorway, one hand pressed against her burning cheek. His eyes, those cold gray eyes, focused on the red mark spreading across her face. Something changed in his expression. Not softening exactly, more like ice cracking before it breaks. "What happened to your face?" Dominic asked her directly, as if Gregory had ceased to exist. Clara's breath caught. No one ever asked. Not neighbors, not teachers when she was younger, not the few friends she'd had before isolation became easier than explanation. "Nothing," she said automatically. "Don't lie to me." Still quiet, still calm, but underneath steel. Gregory laughed, high and nervous. "This is a family matter. You need to leave before I call the police." Dominic turned his attention back to Gregory, with the laziness of a predator who knows the prey can't escape. "Please do call them. I'm sure they'd be interested in your offshore accounts. The unreported gambling income. The tax fraud spanning 8 years." Silence dropped like a guillotine. Margaret appeared in the hallway behind Gregory, Sophie clutching her arm, both of them pale, both of them afraid of this new threat that had materialized on their doorstep. But Clara felt something different stirring in her chest. Hope. Dominic Morello didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He stood in the Hayes family entryway like he owned it, snowflakes melting on his shoulders, and spoke with the kind of authority that came from never being questioned. "Your daughter," he said to Gregory, nodding toward Clara. "How did she get that mark?" "That's none of your damn business," Gregory blustered, but he'd taken another step back, closer to his wife and younger daughter. "You're wrong." Dominic's gaze remained fixed on Clara's face, specifically on the red handprint blooming across her cheek. "Everything that happens in a debtor's household becomes my business when payment is overdue." Clara touched her face again, suddenly self-conscious under this stranger's intense scrutiny. There was something in his expression she couldn't quite name. Not pity, not even anger. Something colder and more purposeful. "He hit me," she said clearly. "Is that what you wanted to hear?" Margaret made a small sound of distress. Gregory's face flushed darker. "Clara, shut your mouth." "No." The word came out stronger than she'd intended. Clara straightened her spine, meeting Dominic Morello's eyes. "He hits me. He hits my mother. He throws things. He screams. He drinks. And apparently he owes dangerous people a lot of money he doesn't have." The truth tasted sharp and clean, like winter air after years in a sealed room. Dominic studied her for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. Not warmly, but with something like recognition. "Mr. Hayes," he said, finally looking away from Clara, "I'm going to make you an offer. I don't want your offers. I want you gone. You have until Monday to pay what you owe. With interest, that's $230,000. Dominic's tone suggested he was discussing the weather. "Cash. Small bills. I'll send someone to collect." Gregory laughed, but it came out strangled. "I don't have that kind of money." "Then we have a problem." The statement settled over the room like frost. Sophie had started crying quietly, her face pressed against her mother's side. Margaret's lips moved in what might have been a prayer. Gregory swayed slightly, the bourbon and fear catching up to him. Clara remained perfectly still, watching this man in the black coat dismantle her father's world with nothing but words. "However," Dominic continued, "I'm prepared to offer an alternative arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" Gregory's voice cracked. Dominic's gaze returned to Clara. "Your daughter works for me. 3 months. My estate needs better organization, and I understand she has a college degree." The room erupted. Gregory shouted about slavery and kidnapping. Margaret grabbed Clara's arm, suddenly finding her voice in a torrent of absolutely not and over my dead body. Sophie just cried harder. But Clara heard something else entirely in Dominic Morello's words. "Escape." 3 months, Dominic repeated, his voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. "In exchange, your debt is forgiven. Your daughter returns home safely. Everyone lives." The last 2 words carried unmistakable weight. "And if I refuse?" Gregory demanded. Dominic buttoned his coat, preparing to leave. "Then you'll discover what my organization does to people who steal from us. Starting with this house, then your wife's jewelry, then your car. Then, eventually, something more permanent." He moved toward the door, then paused beside Clara. "It's your choice," he said quietly, meant only for her. "I won't force you, but the offer stands until tomorrow noon." Clara looked at this stranger who'd walked into her nightmare and offered her a door out. She didn't know him, didn't trust him, had no idea what kind of danger she'd be walking into. But she knew the danger she lived with now. "Noon tomorrow," she whispered. "I'll be ready." Dominic nodded once. "Someone will come for you." Then he was gone, stepping back into the snow, leaving only melting footprints and the sharp scent of expensive cologne. The door closed. Gregory turned on Clara, his face purple with rage, but she was already walking away, already moving toward her bedroom, already packing in her mind. "You're not going anywhere," he shouted after her. Clara didn't answer. For the first time in 23 years, her father's voice couldn't reach her. She was already gone. Clara spent that night locked in her room, listening to her parents fight below, her mother's shrill voice. "She's our daughter, Gregory. You can't just give her to the Mafia." Her father's roar. "It's 3 months or we lose everything. The house, the cars, your precious lifestyle. What about Clara's life? Her safety? She'll be fine. It's just filing papers or whatever. Besides, this is her fault for opening her mouth." Clara pressed her pillow over her head, but their voices leaked through. The same old pattern. Margaret would cry and protest, but ultimately she'd fold. She always did. Comfort trumped courage in the Hayes household. Around midnight, Clara heard her father's heavy footsteps on the stairs. She held her breath, waiting for him to try her locked door, but he stumbled past to his own bedroom. Silence fell. Clara sat up in the darkness and assessed her situation with the cold logic she'd developed over years of survival. Option 1. Stay. Continue living under her father's roof and fists. Hope the debt collectors didn't burn the house down around them. Hope Gregory didn't get worse as the pressure mounted. Option 2. Leave with Dominic Morello. Walk into complete unknown danger. Work for a man who clearly operated outside the law. Risk. What? She didn't even know what she was risking. But here was the thing Clara had learned about fear when you've lived with it long enough. New fear starts looking like opportunity. She began packing. Not much. A week's worth of clothes. Her laptop. The emergency cash she'd been hiding in a book for 2 years, $300 in 20s. Her mother's grandmother's ring. The only jewelry that meant anything. At 11:47 the next morning, Clara carried her bag downstairs. The family sat in the living room like hostages. Gregory had clearly been drinking already, despite the early hour. Margaret's eyes were swollen from crying. Sophie wouldn't look at anyone. "You don't have to do this," Margaret said weakly. "Yes, she does," Gregory snapped. Clara set her bag by the door. "I want to." Her mother's head jerked up. "What?" "I want to go," Clara repeated, and realized it was true. Whatever waited for her at Dominic Morello's estate couldn't be worse than this. And if it was, well, at least it would be a different kind of prison. The doorbell rang at exactly noon. Clara opened it to find not Dominic, but a driver in a dark suit. Professional, polite. He introduced himself as Vincent, took her bag, and gestured toward a black town car idling in the driveway. "Wait." Margaret rushed forward, suddenly frantic. "Clara, sweetheart, please." "I'll call you," Clara said, though she wasn't sure she meant it. She walked toward the car without looking back. Vincent opened the rear door. The interior smelled like leather and subtle cologne, the same scent from last night. Dominic Morello sat in the back seat, reading something on his phone. He glanced up as Clara slid in beside him. "You came. Did you think I wouldn't?" "I hoped you would." He returned to his phone but added, "There's water in the console. It's a 40-minute drive." The car pulled away from the curb. Clara watched her childhood home recede in the side mirror. The house that had never felt like home. The family that had never felt safe. The red mark on her cheek had faded to a dull bruise overnight, but she could still feel the echo of her father's hand. "Thank you," she said quietly. Dominic looked at her, surprise flickering in those gray eyes. "For what?" "For the door out." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "You're welcome." They drove in silence through Boston's outskirts, the city giving way to suburbs, then to estates hidden behind stone walls and winter-bare trees. Snow clung to everything, making the world look clean despite all its ugliness. Finally, Vincent turned onto a private road marked by iron gates. They swung open automatically, revealing a long drive flanked by oak trees. Clara sat forward, her breath catching. The house? No. The mansion rose from the snow-covered grounds like something from another century. Gray stone, 3 stories, tall windows reflecting the weak winter Sunday. Ivy climbed one wall despite the cold. Smoke curled from 2 chimneys. "Welcome to Morello Estate," Dominic said. You're home for the next 3 months. The car stopped at the front steps. Vincent opened Clara's door. She stepped out into cold air that tasted like pine and possibility. Dominic appeared beside her, hands in his coat pockets, surveying his property with the detached pride of someone who'd earned everything he owned. "Come inside," he said. "I'll show you your room." Clara followed him up the stone steps, through a door of dark wood and iron, into a world that bore no resemblance to the life she'd left behind. The interior of Morello Estate hit Clara like a physical thing: vast spaces, high ceilings, and a silence so complete it felt intentional. The entry hall stretched before her in shades of cream and gold. A wrought iron staircase curved upward to the second floor. Real paintings, not prints, hung on the walls in ornate frames. The floor was marble, catching the light from a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than her father's house. But despite the obvious wealth, the space felt cold. Not temperature, the heating worked fine. Emotionally cold, like a museum after hours. "Vincent will bring your bag," Dominic said, removing his coat. Underneath he wore a charcoal suit, perfectly tailored, the kind that didn't come off a rack. "This way." He led her up the staircase, his footsteps making no sound on the runner carpet. Clara found herself watching the way he moved, controlled, economical, nothing wasted. A man who'd learned to be careful in his own home. The second floor opened onto a wide hallway with doors on either side. Dominic walked to the third door on the right and pushed it open. "Yours," he said simply. Clara stepped past him into a bedroom that was larger than her entire childhood room. A 4-poster bed dominated one wall, dressed in white linens. Tall windows overlooked the snow-covered gardens. A desk, a dresser, a door leading to what she assumed was a private bathroom. Everything pristine. Everything impersonal. "You can change whatever you like," Dominic said from the doorway. "Paint, furniture, whatever makes you comfortable. Just tell Vincent or Mrs. Chen she manages the household." Clara turned to face him. "What exactly do you want from me?" He met her gaze without hesitation. "Organization. My business generates extensive paperwork contracts, schedules, financial records. My previous assistant left 2 months ago, and everything has descended into chaos. You'll coordinate my calendar, manage correspondence, maintain files, standard administrative work, standard for a crime boss." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "I prefer businessman. That's not what my father called your organization. Your father owes money to a lot of people with different titles. I happen to be the one who collects." Dominic leaned against the doorframe, studying her. "Are you afraid of me, Clara?" She considered the question seriously. "I don't know yet." "Good. Fear makes people stupid. I'd rather you stayed smart." Vincent appeared with her bag, setting it carefully by the bed before disappearing again without a word. Dominic pushed off the doorframe. "Bathroom's through there. Take your time settling in. Dinner is at 7 in the main dining room, east wing, first floor. Mrs. Chen will show you if you get lost." He turned to leave. "Dominic?" He paused, looking back. "Why did you really make that offer? To get my father's debt, you could have just taken the house, taken everything. Why involve me?" For the first time since she'd met him, something shifted in his expression. Not quite vulnerability, but close. "Because I watched your father hit you," he said quietly. "And I recognized the aftermath. The way you held yourself. The way you looked at him." He was silent for a moment. "I grew up in a house like yours. And when I was old enough to fight back, I swore I'd never let men like that have power again." The words hung between them, honest, raw, completely unexpected. "So this is charity?" Clara asked. "This is giving you the same choice someone should have given my mother." His voice had gone flat again, controlled. "She died when I was 16. Heart attack, the doctors said. But I knew better. Fear kills as surely as violence." Clara's throat tightened. Dominic nodded once, as if he'd said too much, and left. The door clicked shut. Clara stood alone in her new room, her escape room, and pressed her hand against her chest, feeling her heartbeat strong and steady. Still here, still breathing. For the first time in years, she felt something she'd almost forgotten. Safe. Clara spent the first 2 days learning the layout of Morello Estate. The house was enormous, 23 rooms, Mrs. Chen informed her crisply, not counting the wine cellar or the third-floor storage. The east wing held the main living spaces. Dining room, library, sitting rooms that looked like they'd never been sat in. The west wing housed Dominic's office, and what Mrs. Chen referred to as business facilities with a meaningful look that suggested Clara shouldn't explore uninvited. The staff was small but efficient. Vincent handled driving and security. Mrs. Chen managed the household with military precision. A rotating cast of cleaners came twice a week. That was it. Mr. Morello values privacy, Mrs. Chen explained. He doesn't like strangers in his space. Clara understood that instinct completely. She saw Dominic rarely during those first days. He left early, returned late, occasionally appeared for meals that were eaten in relative silence. He wasn't cold exactly, but distant, professional. Then came the third night. Clara couldn't sleep. The bed was too soft, the silence too complete. Around 2 a.m., she gave up and padded downstairs in sweatpants and a t-shirt, thinking she'd find the kitchen and make tea. Instead, she found Dominic in the library. He sat in a leather chair by the fireplace, a glass of amber liquid in his hand, staring at the flames. He'd shed his suit jacket and tie. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms marked with scars. Old ones, white with age. "Can't sleep?" he asked without looking away from the fire. Clara hesitated in the doorway. "I didn't mean to intrude." "You're not." He gestured to the chair opposite his. "Sit." She moved into the room, feeling the heat from the fire immediately. The library smelled like leather and old paper, comfortable in a way the rest of the house wasn't. Clara sat, tucking her legs under her. "Do you always stay up this late?" "Often." He took a sip of his drink whiskey, she guessed. "Sleeping requires letting your guard down. Some nights that's harder than others." "I understand that." Dominic finally looked at her. "I imagine you do." They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling between them. Clara found herself staring at the scars on his arms, wondering about their stories. "My father," Dominic said quietly, as if reading her mind. "Belt buckle mostly. Occasionally cigarettes when he was feeling creative." Clara's stomach clenched. "How old were you?" "Started around 6. Ended when I was 16 and big enough to hit back." He rotated his glass, watching the whiskey catch the firelight. "The night my mother died, I walked into her bedroom and she was just gone, sitting in her chair by the window. Heart failure, the coroner said. She was 41. I'm sorry. So was I." His voice had gone flat. "For years. Sorry I hadn't gotten us out sooner. Sorry I'd been too weak, too scared. Sorry I'd let her fade away in that house of terror." Clara leaned forward. "You were a child. Children become men. And men have choices." He drained his glass and set it aside. "I joined the organization 2 years later. Worked my way up. Made money. Made connections. Made myself powerful enough that no one would ever hurt me again. And now you run it. Now I run it." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "My father died 5 years ago. Liver failure. I didn't attend his funeral." Clara absorbed this, the parallel tracks of their trauma, the different ways they'd survived. "Your turn," Dominic said. "My turn? Tell me about your father." She should have refused. Should have kept her history locked away where it belonged. But something about the late hour, the firelight, the fact that this man had just exposed his own scars, it made her brave. "Started when I was 9, Clara said. Nothing severe at first. A grab, a shove. Escalated as I got older and started talking back. My mother." She paused, swallowing hard. "My mother loves comfort more than she loves us, so she pretends not to see." "And your sister?" "Sophie's 12. I tried to shield her, but she sees everything. You can't unsee violence." "No," Dominic agreed quietly. "You can't." Clara looked at his scars again, then at her own hands. No visible marks, but the damage was there. Internal. Permanent. "Why did you really bring me here?" she asked. The debt could have been collected other ways. Dominic was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight Clara hadn't heard before. "Because I saw you standing in that doorway with his handprint on your face, and I saw my mother. I saw every woman who's ever been hit and told to stay quiet, to be grateful, to accept it." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I couldn't save my mother, but I could stop another man from destroying his daughter." The words landed like stones in water, heavy, sinking, rippling outward. "So, this is redemption?" Clara whispered. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just doing what I wish someone had done for us." She met his eyes across the firelight. "Then maybe we're both trying to heal." Something shifted in his expression: surprise, recognition, something almost like relief. "Maybe we are," he said softly. They sat together in the library until the fire burned down to embers, two people bound by shared wounds, beginning to understand that survival could look like salvation if you found the right person to survive with. Clara started work on Monday morning. Dominic's office occupied the entire western corner of the ground floor, a massive space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking snow-covered grounds, a desk large enough to land a plane on, and filing cabinets that looked like they hadn't been properly organized since the Clinton administration. "This is what you're working with," Dominic said, gesturing at the chaos. Papers covered every surface. File folders sat in precarious stacks. His desk was buried under contracts, receipts, invoices, correspondence dating back months. Clara surveyed the disaster with something approaching delight. "This is horrifying. Can you fix it? Give me a week." He smiled, genuinely smiled. No ice in it. "You have 3 months. Take your time." But Clara had never been good at taking her time. Organization had always been her coping mechanism, the one thing she could control when everything else spiraled. By noon, she'd established a system. Current contracts in the red folders, financial documents in blue, correspondence in green, archived material in boxes labeled by quarter and year. Dominic returned around 2 with coffee for both of them, and found her kneeling on the floor, surrounded by paper, hair tied back, completely absorbed. "You're enjoying this," he observed. "Chaos is just order waiting to happen." Clara accepted the coffee gratefully. "Your filing system was a crime against logic." "Was?" Past tense. "I burned it to the ground and started over." He laughed, an actual laugh, warm and surprised. Clara felt something flutter in her chest at the sound. Over the following days, they fell into a rhythm. Clara arrived at the office by 8. Dominic joined her by 9, often with coffee and pastries from a bakery he refused to name. They worked in companionable silence, broken by occasional questions or brief conversations about file organization versus digital systems. Clara learned things about him in those hours. The way he frowned at particularly difficult contracts. How he drummed his fingers on the desk when thinking. The fact that he took calls in Italian when he didn't want her to understand, though she picked up enough to know he was usually threatening someone. She learned he was ruthless in business but scrupulously fair with his people. That he read constantly history, philosophy, crime novels. That he hated asparagus and loved dark chocolate. That he never, ever raised his voice, even when angry. And she learned that she felt safe in his presence in a way she'd never felt safe with any man. Thursday afternoon they took lunch together in the library. Mrs. Chen had prepared something elegant involving salmon and asparagus, which Dominic pushed around his plate with obvious distaste. "Just tell her you don't like it," Clara said, amused. "She's been serving me asparagus for 3 years. At this point, it would be rude to admit I've been lying. That's ridiculous. That's politeness." He speared a piece anyway and chewed with the expression of someone taking medicine. "How are you settling in?" "Better than expected." Clara set down her fork. "Everyone here is professional. Respectful. It's strange." "Strange? How?" "Strange, like I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For someone to yell or throw something or—" She stopped, realizing what she'd revealed. Dominic's expression softened. "That won't happen here. How can you promise that?" "Because I built this place to be exactly what my childhood home wasn't. Controlled. Calm. Safe." He met her eyes. "No one yells in my house, Clara. No one threatens. And anyone who tried would find themselves removed. Permanently." The last word carried unmistakable weight. Clara believed him. That evening, she found herself back in the library after dinner, curled in the chair that was becoming hers. Dominic joined her around 9, as had become his habit, with his whiskey and his quiet presence. "You're good at this," he said after a while. "At what?" "At organizing chaos. At making order from disaster." He studied her over his glass. "I've had 3 assistants in the past 5 years. None of them lasted more than 8 months. None of them could handle the pressure or the questions they couldn't ask. Maybe they didn't grow up managing chaos. Or maybe you're just better at seeing the structure underneath the mess." He smiled slightly. "You have a gift for finding the logic in illogical systems." Clara felt warmth bloom in her chest at the compliment. "I've been managing chaos all my life. This is just better paid chaos." They sat in comfortable silence, the fire crackling, snow falling outside the windows. Clara felt something she'd almost forgotten: contentment. The simple pleasure of being somewhere she didn't have to be on guard. "Thank you," she said quietly. Dominic raised an eyebrow. For letting me be useful. For trusting me with your work. For she hesitated. For seeing me as capable instead of damaged. He set down his glass and leaned forward, his expression serious. "You're not damaged, Clara. You're surviving. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." His voice was firm. "Damage is passive. Survival is active. You chose to walk into my car. You chose to take this job. You choose every day to keep moving forward despite what you've endured." He held her gaze. "That's not damage. That's strength." Clara felt tears prick her eyes, the good kind. The kind that came from being seen truly and completely. "Thank you," she whispered again. Dominic nodded once, understanding flowing between them without need for more words. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in clean silence. Inside, two people who understood survival sat together in the warmth, beginning to understand that healing didn't require forgetting, just finding someone who understood. The first real threat arrived on a Tuesday morning in the form of 3 men in dark cars. Clara saw them from Dominic's office window, sleek black vehicles pulling up the drive, parking at aggressive angles. 6 men emerged, wearing expensive coats and expressions that promised violence. "Dominic," she called, her voice sharper than intended. He crossed to the window immediately, his entire demeanor shifting when he saw the visitors. The relaxed man who'd been laughing at her joke about his filing system disappeared, replaced by someone harder, colder. "Go upstairs," he said quietly. "To your room. Lock the door." "Who are they?" "Business rivals. And you're not part of this discussion." He was already moving toward the door. "Vincent will come get you when it's safe." Clara wanted to argue, but the look in his eyes stopped her. This was the part of his life he'd been shielding her from: the violence, the threats, the reality of running a criminal organization. She went upstairs as instructed, but instead of going to her room, she crept to the second-floor landing where she could hear voices from below. "I didn't think you'd be stupid enough to show up here," Dominic was saying, his voice carrying that dangerous calm. "We go where we're not welcome. Keeps things interesting." This voice was Irish accented, amused. "Word is you're getting soft, Morello. Taking in strays. Playing house instead of handling business. My personal life isn't your concern. Everything about you concerns us, especially when you're sitting on territory we want." Clara's heart hammered. She pressed closer to the banister, trying to see. "The North Shore is mine," Dominic said flatly. "It's been mine for 5 years. That's not changing. Things change faster than you think. Kings fall, empires crumble. A pause. Pretty girl you've got staying here. College educated, I hear. Wonder how she'd feel about your line of work." The temperature in the entry hall seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You mention her again," Dominic said, his voice softer than Clara had ever heard it soft, like a blade being drawn. "And we're going to have a very different conversation. One that involves fewer words and more consequences. Threatening us in your own home? That's bold. That's a promise. Now get out." Footsteps. Low laughter. The sound of the front door opening. "This isn't over, Morello. It never is. But you'll lose, same as everyone else who's tried." The door closed. Clara waited, counting her heartbeats, until she heard Dominic's footsteps on the stairs. He found her on the landing, reading her position instantly. "You didn't go to your room. I wanted to know what was happening. That was dangerous." "I'm not fragile." Clara stood, facing him squarely. "And I'm not stupid. You're in danger. Someone wants your territory badly enough to threaten you in your home." Dominic's jaw tightened. "This is exactly why I told you to go upstairs. You don't need to be part of." "I'm already part of it," Clara interrupted. "They mentioned me, used me as a threat, which means I'm involved whether you like it or not." He stared at her for a long moment, conflict playing across his features. Finally he sighed. "The O'Sullivan family. They've been pushing into Boston for 6 months. They want the docks, the shipping routes, everything I control. And they'll hurt you to get it. They'll try." Clara moved closer, close enough to see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands had formed fists at his sides. "Have you considered that maybe you don't have to do this alone? You're an assistant, Clara, not a soldier. I'm a person who cares whether you live or die." The words came out more intense than she'd intended. "Is that so hard to accept?" Something shifted in his expression, surprise, giving way to something deeper, more complicated. "You shouldn't care," he said quietly. Too late. They stood on the landing, snow falling outside the windows, danger pressing in from all sides. Clara could see the war happening behind Dominic's eyes, the instinct to push her away fighting against the need to let someone in. "This isn't your fight," he said finally. "You pulled me into your world, made me part of your life. You don't get to draw arbitrary lines now about what I'm allowed to care about." Clara took another step closer. "I'm not leaving, Dominic. Not because of debt or contracts or time limits. I'm staying because I choose to. Even if it's dangerous. Especially then." She met his eyes, unflinching. "I've lived with danger my whole life. At least this danger comes with someone worth fighting beside." For the first time since she'd met him, Dominic looked genuinely shaken. Not by threats or rival organizations, but by the simple honesty of her words. "You're insane," he said. But there was warmth in it. "Probably." Clara smiled. "But so are you for bringing me here in the first place." He laughed, that rare, genuine sound that made her chest ache. "Fair point." They stood together in the quiet house, two people who'd found each other through violence and were choosing each other through trust. Outside, snow continued falling. Inside, something had fundamentally shifted. The next week passed in controlled tension. Dominic increased security, more cameras, more locked doors. Vincent suddenly omnipresent. Clara caught glimpses of other men on the grounds, professional and alert, clearly hired muscle. But inside the house, life continued. Work continued. The quiet evenings by the fire continued. Clara found herself watching Dominic more than she should. The way his hair fell across his forehead when he concentrated. How he pressed his thumb against his lower lip when thinking through a problem. The rare moments when his guard dropped and she saw something vulnerable beneath the armor. She was falling for him, she realized with a shock one evening. Actually, genuinely falling for the man who'd saved her from one prison and offered her safety in his own complicated fortress. The realization terrified her. On Friday night, Clara couldn't sleep again. She went downstairs around midnight, expecting to find the library empty, but Dominic was there. He stood at the window, looking out at snow-covered grounds, tension radiating from every line of his body. "Rough night?" she asked softly. He turned, surprise flickering across his face. "Thought you'd be asleep." "Thought the same about you." Clara moved to stand beside him. "Want to talk about it?" "Not much to say. The O'Sullivans are escalating. They hit one of my warehouses yesterday. Nothing major, just enough to send a message." "What kind of message?" "That they're willing to start a war if I don't step aside." He rubbed his face tiredly. "And I'm trying to decide if territory is worth the bloodshed." Clara studied his profile, the sharp line of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. "What does your gut say?" "My gut says if I back down now, I look weak. Other families will circle like sharks. Everything I've built will crumble. And your heart?" He looked at her then, really looked, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "My heart says I'm tired of fighting, that maybe there are things worth more than power." The air between them felt charged, electric. "Like what?" Clara whispered. "Like peace, like safety." He paused. "Like the woman who reorganized my entire office in 4 days and makes me laugh for the first time in years." Clara's heart stopped, then started again, faster. "Dominic, I know this is insane," he continued, his voice rough. "You've been here 2 weeks. You're supposed to be an employee. I'm not supposed to feel." He cut himself off, jaw clenching. "Feel what?" Clara demanded, something fierce rising in her chest. "Say it." "Everything." The word came out harsh, honest. "I feel everything when you're near. And it's terrifying because I spent 20 years learning not to feel anything at all." Clara moved closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from him. "I'm tired of pretending this is just a job. Clara, I'm tired of sitting across from you at dinner and pretending I don't want more. Tired of listening to you talk about your day and not being able to touch you. Tired of this being temporary when I want." She stopped, courage faltering. "Want what?" His voice had gone lower, dangerous in an entirely different way. "This. You. All of it." Clara looked up at him, putting everything she felt into her eyes. "I want to stay. Not because of a contract or debt. Because I choose you." "I'm not a good man," Dominic said, but he was moving closer, his hand coming up to cup her face. "I've done terrible things. I run an organization built on fear and violence. You deserve better." "Then let me see the bad parts too." Clara leaned into his touch. "I'm not asking for perfect. I'm asking for real." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, tracing the spot where her father's handprint had been. You should run from me. I'm done running. The last distance between them dissolved. Dominic kissed her like a man who'd been holding back for too long, intense, consuming, carrying weeks of restrained desire. His hand slid into her hair, angling her head. Clara gripped his shirt, pulling him closer, pouring everything she felt into the kiss. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Dominic pressed his forehead against hers. We shouldn't, he said, voice rough. But we will, Clara whispered back. He laughed softly, helplessly. Yes, we will. They kissed again, slower this time, learning each other. Outside, snow fell in the darkness. Inside, two people who'd survived hell separately were choosing each other deliberately, consciously, completely. Clara had spent 23 years living in fear. This felt like the opposite. This felt like coming home. Christmas morning arrived quiet and white. Clara woke to find something on her pillow. A small silver key attached to a note in Dominic's precise handwriting. To the house. You can leave or stay. Your choice. Always your choice. She held the key, understanding its significance. This wasn't just access to a building. This was trust. This was him saying she belonged here not because of debt or contracts, but because he wanted her here. Clara dressed quickly and went downstairs. She found Dominic in the kitchen. Actually in the kitchen, not the formal dining room. He stood at the stove making eggs, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of his usual suit. The domesticity of it made her smile. You found it, he said without turning around. I did. Clara set the key on the counter. What does it mean? It means you're not an employee anymore. You're... He paused, struggling with words. You're mine, if you want to be. And this is your home, if you want it. Clara moved around the counter to face him. That's a big statement. I'm aware. We've known each other 5 weeks. I'm aware of that too. Dominic turned off the stove and faced her fully. I know this is fast. I know it's insane. But I've spent 15 years building walls and you walked through them like they didn't exist. You make me want things I stopped wanting years ago. Like what? Like mornings. Like someone to talk to. Like... He stopped, then pushed forward. Like a future that isn't just survival. Clara's throat tightened with emotion. And if I say yes? If I stay? Then you stay as what you are. Mine. Just mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel secure in a way nothing else ever had. This wasn't control born from cruelty. This was protection, born from care. Dominic, she said softly. Yes? Ask me properly. He blinked, then understanding dawned. A smile tugged at his mouth, nervous, genuine, completely unlike the controlled mask he usually wore. Clara Hayes. He took both her hands. Marry me. You're insane, she whispered. Maybe, but I've never been more certain of anything. His grip tightened. I want you here. Not temporarily. Not as staff. As my wife. As my partner. As the person I wake up to every morning for the rest of my life. Clara looked at this man who'd pulled her from darkness, who made her laugh, who understood survival because he'd survived too. She thought about the key, the house, the life being offered. She thought about safety that came from choice instead of fear. Yes, she said. Dominic's face transformed relief and joy, breaking through his usual control. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll stay. Yes to all of it. Clara smiled. On one condition. Anything. We do this properly. No rushing. I want time to be sure this is real and not just... He kissed her, cutting off the words. When he pulled back, he was grinning. It's real, but take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. Clara laughed against his mouth. Neither am I. They stood in the kitchen as snow fell outside, two people who'd found each other through violence, choosing love through absolute certainty. Later, Dominic produced a ring white gold, with a single diamond, elegant and simple. It fit perfectly. How did you know my size? Clara asked. I pay attention. He kissed her knuckles. Always. They spent Christmas Day together, just the two of them. No formality, no pretense. Just two people beginning to build something neither had thought possible. That evening, Clara called her mother. Clara? Margaret's voice was tight with worry. We haven't heard from you in weeks. I'm fine, Mom. Better than fine. Clara looked at Dominic across the room. I'm getting married. Silence. Then, to who? To the man who saved me. Clara smiled. I'll send details soon. Love you. She hung up before her mother could protest. Dominic raised an eyebrow. That went well. She'll adjust. Clara moved into his arms. Everyone will adjust. And if they don't, then they don't. She looked up at him. I'm choosing my own family now, starting with you. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her mouth. Best Christmas I've ever had. Clara agreed completely. They married 2 weeks later in the estate's back garden. No guests beyond Vincent and Mrs. Chen as witnesses. No formal reception or elaborate planning. Just Clara in a simple white dress and Dominic in a dark suit, standing in ankle-deep snow while a justice of the peace read vows. Do you, Dominic Morello, take Clara Hayes? I do. He didn't wait for the rest, making Clara laugh. Do you, Clara Hayes, take Dominic Morello? I do. She squeezed his hands. Absolutely. The justice smiled. Then by the power vested in me by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I pronounce you husband and wife. Dominic kissed her before the words even finished, deep and claiming. Clara kissed him back, pouring everything into it: gratitude, love, choice. When they broke apart, snow fell around them like blessing. Mrs. Morello, Dominic said softly, testing the name. Mr. Morello, Clara replied, grinning. They walked back to the house hand in hand, while Vincent and Mrs. Chen followed at a respectful distance. Inside, Mrs. Chen had prepared a small feast, nothing elaborate, just good food shared between people who'd become family. That night, Clara stood in their bedroom now, not just hers, and looked at the ring on her finger, white gold catching lamplight, proof this was real. Dominic came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Regrets? None. Clara leaned back against him. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner. They stood together at the window, watching snow blanket the grounds. In the distance, Boston glowed against the darkness, the city they'd both survived, the place that had shaped and scarred them. What happens now? Clara asked. Now we live. Dominic kissed her temple. We build something good. We choose each other every day. We survive together instead of alone. And your business? The territory fights? I'm negotiating peace with the O'Sullivans. Vincent thinks I'm crazy, but he paused. I don't want to spend our marriage fighting wars. I want to be here. With you. Clara turned in his arms. You'd give up power for me? I'd give up everything for you. His voice was absolutely certain. You're the only thing that matters. She kissed him. This man who'd saved her, who chose her, who saw her completely and loved her anyway. When they finally broke apart, Clara whispered against his mouth. I love you. I love you too. Dominic smiled, that rare, genuine expression that transformed his entire face. Thank you for being brave enough to get in my car. Thank you for offering me the door out. They stood together in the quiet house, two survivors who'd found each other in darkness and chosen to build light together. Outside, snow continued falling, covering old scars with clean white silence. Inside, Clara and Dominic began the rest of their lives. Not perfect, not easy, but absolutely, completely theirs. Love isn't safe, Clara thought as she drifted toward sleep in her husband's arms, but neither was fear. She'd choose this danger, this beautiful, complicated, chosen danger over her father's cruelty every single time. And for the first time in 23 years, Clara Hayes, Clara Morello felt something she'd thought was impossible. Peace.